were you thinking? What did you see as you did this? And if the circumstances, are enough that they say, this was a reasonable thing, he made a mistake, she made a mistake, but it wasn't anything egregious, it wasn't anything with any intent, we're going to let it go, basically based on the integrity of the game and the player. And of course, there's still going to be a line, but it's going to be a fuzzier line now. And I think it'll give the ruling bodies and the committees who do these rulings at the tournaments more leeway.
We just showed, as you were explaining it, we showed the verbiage of this proposed Rule 1.3a. How do you enforce this? In your mind, as you've thought about this, how do you enforce reasonable judgment? Because you're almost trying to interpret state of mind.
Well, I think you give the benefit of the doubt to the player. And for example, last year at Oakmont, you might ask Dustin Johnson, and he would have said, I wasn't trying to do anything by getting my putter near the ball, and it moved. I don't know why. Of course, the rule was in place at that time that he could have caused it to move. But had the reasonable standard of judgment been applied, he probably would not have been penalized. So again, we're talking about gray areas. In my opinion, Lexi's mismarking or poor replacement of the ball was pretty close to something that you would probably not let go. I'm not sure. It's about half a ball. That's a lot, I think. Players notice that when they play with their playing partners, and I think, Chella Choi a few years ago was called on that, and she withdrew from the tournament. So I don't know where the line is, but it's not a minute line, let's put it that way. If it's something that the human eye or video evidence can barely discern, I think they're going to give the player the benefit of the doubt.
What I've thought about is it's one thing that, obviously the top players, the players that are contending, they're under the guise of having all these cameras on them at all times. There are other players that are in these fields, and they do have a responsibility, protect the field. How about incidents that don't have video evidence to support it? How do you monitor that? And aren't you putting an even bigger onus on all these competitors?
Well, but that's the way it used to be before there was video evidence, Gary. And, the players self-policed pretty well. And, without naming names, there have been players over the years that have been suspended from the tour quietly for these kind of poor habits with marking the ball. And on both tours, men's and women's. So it was not unheard of. And I think, Jack Nicklaus was very pointed at the Masters going, by the way, I never in my mind ever mismarked the ball or ever had a problem marking the ball. But we used to know the guys that did, and we'd go stand over them and we'd talk to them in the locker room, and it wouldn't happen again. Or if it did happen again, then the tour would actually enforce something, whether it was suspension or a fine or something with some heavy consequences. And of course, the worst thing was reputation being besmirched. And as you know, in golf, it's huge to be considered anything near a cheater. So, that was effective too. I think now there's actually more gray area, because even though a player who's a playing partner might say, he moved his putt badly there, he marked his ball badly, the player can go, geez, I didn't mean to, it was an accident, I was not trying to get any advantage, and under this proposed new rule, he probably would get more of a benefit of the doubt than he would have under the old way and before there was video evidence.
Last thing, Phil Mickelson was also somebody last week, was asked about it. He said that she should have been awarded the trophy, but he went on to say, I know a number of guys on tour that are loose with how they mark the ball and have not been called on it. I mean, they will move the ball 2 to 3 inches in front of their mark, and this is an intentional way to get it out of any type of impression and so forth, and I think that kind of stuff needs to stop.